That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about The Reckoning, the latest film directed by Neil Marshall, which RLJ Entertainment is releasing February 5th, 2021. Premiered initially at the 2020 Fantasia Film Festival.
What do I know Neil Marshall from?
Neil Marshall is the director of The Descent.
Yes, that's right. Which I know you really like.
Yes, that is definitely a favorite of mine. I think this is his 6th film. I'm happy to see him coming off of, he rebooted Hellboy in 2019 with David Harbour, which
Oh, have I seen that?
I don't know. I did, and I was not a fan of it.
Oh.
I don't know that that's a fault of his, but I'm glad to see him kind of returning to a vein that I think suits him well.
Sure. Okay, this story is set in the 1600s, Black Plague time in the UK.
Yep, England 1665 as the opening credits tell us.
Sure. The film starts with a woman named Grace, who's played by...
Charlotte Kirk.
Her husband has hanged himself, so she's attempting to cut him down from the tree after she's dug a hole to bury him in. Then we flash back to how he may have died. So we see her husband named Joseph, who's played by...
Joe Anderson.
Oh, his name's Joe?
Yeah.
I did know that, actually.
Yeah, I know, because I said it several times as we watched it.
We see her husband at like the local pub, or the Kingdom pub, whatever you would call it back in 1665.
Which has like this flying eagle or some emblem above the door.
Yeah, it was very Hunger Games. The town squire, so this man who like owns all the property, he's in the pub and it appears that he has poisoned the drink of Joseph.
Well, he takes that drink out of some man clearly suffering from the plague.
And like mixes them. Oh, so maybe he was trying to get Joseph sick.
Yeah.
Oh, see, I thought he had poisoned him.
Oh, no.
That makes more sense. Okay. So it's clear that the squire is attempting to poison Joseph, but at the last minute, because a woman comes over and like bumps into Joseph, and he ends up like not grabbing the mug he should have, and then he sees this man like pass out and die. So we see him back home. He's progressively getting more ill, and then he chooses to hang himself, I suppose, instead of like putting his wife through suffering.
An infant.
And an infant. So now the squire, after Joseph is dead and buried, the squire shows up at Grace's home to collect rent. And he's like, oh yeah, now that your husband's dead, how do you intend on paying for anything? And she hands him like a couple coins. And he's like, that's not enough. Basically telling her like, if you let me use you physically. I don't know what his intention was, to just have sex with her, to make her his woman. But whatever, he's exploiting her, she's not into it. They end up getting into a fight where she like burns him with a poker and like smashes his face in. And then he leaves. He goes down to that same pub and tells everyone what happens and thinks that there's something weird about Grace because how come she and her child aren't sick but her husband died of the plague? And within seconds, the entire pub is convinced she's a witch. Cut to these village idiots are at her home with the intent to kill her.
Yeah.
So they think they've stabbed her because she crawls up into the attic and they see blood on a sword, which just came from her hand being punctured. And then they set her house on fire. Thankfully, she's able to escape with her child.
Which the squire's mad about because he's like, it's my house.
You burned my house down. She's able to escape with her child, but a gentleman, like one of the people there to like get her, catches her. And the man who catches her happens to be the husband of a friend of Grace's. They bring her back to like the town, put her in a dungeon, and basically say you need to confess to being a witch. She says she's not going to. They take her into the town square and flog her. She's like, I'm not a witch. So they're like, all right, we're going to bring this man called the Witch Finder to like get it out of you.
Popular figures of the time.
And it's clear based on her reaction that she knows that she's in trouble.
Well, and we learned the actual opening sequences over the credits before we even see her burying her husband is a flashback we come to understand of her own mother being burned.
So Grace witnessed her mother when Grace was a child, being burned to the stake by the same man, the witch finder. He shows up, tortures her. She still won't confess. During this period, we're getting flashbacks or memories or premonitions of Joseph in various forms, like as a zombie, as himself. We get various recollections or
intimate fantasies
of them having sex.
He kind of morphs into the devil,
and then we see the devil interacting with her in her mind. Mm-hmm. So it culminates with Grace saying that she will confess, but really she has a plan. And part of her plan is there's this teenage boy who's tending to her in the jail, who's become fond of her, and she gets him to agree to help her. And the plan is she's going to say that she's confessing to the witch finder. Mm-hmm. There's a man in the jail who's died of the plague. The teenage boy, is going to drain the blood, pour the blood into the wine. The witch finder is going to drink the wine and die. So she gets up there, mm-hmm. proposes that she's going to confess, but only if her child is spared. The witch finder says sure. The witch finder has a companion, a woman who he attempted to burn at the stake years prior, but while she was on fire, the rain came. Mm-hmm. So he believed that was a sign that she had been saved or whatever.
Leonora.
Very
Edgar Allan Poe name, yeah.
So Leonora takes the baby. So now it's just Grace and the witch finder in this room, and she assaults him and stabs his hands into this wooden desk so he can't move. Sets the joint on fire. Mm-hmm. While that's happening, the teenage boy goes to steal the baby. The squire wakes up, sees what's happening. The squire and Grace end up getting into an altercation. She kills him. As she's about to escape, I say town, but they live in a kingdom. It's it actually looks pretty cool, and they have a big it's a big what do you call that? Not a fence, but the wall.
Mm-hmm. The castle wall.
And there's a river going through it, and a big
moat and
a moat and all that. The drawbridge. Mm-hmm. So the drawbridge is open, and so now Grace, the teenage boy, and her child are running through the drawbridge when Grace stops and lets the child and the boy go through, and she closes the gate. And she tells him, I'm not going to go with you because I drank the wine that was poisoned, so I'm going to die anyway. And the teenage boy goes, I was trying to tell you, you didn't drink the poison, because at the last minute, when he was taking the wine to the witch finder, the squire's greedy ass took that wine because he thought it was better. So, because she had, in order to convince the witch finder to drink the wine, she also had to drink it. But she's able to escape. She jumps down a sewer or whatever and climbs out, and we see the final shot of the film is her swimming out of the river. Mm-hmm. The end. Okay, that was long. All right. How do you feel about this movie?
I saw Goody Proctor with the devil.
I saw something nasty in the woodshed. Okay.
That's from The Crucible.
Yes.
Well, okay. There are a couple things going on that I was immediately interested in prior to seeing the film. One being a Neil Marshall film, from 2010. His last film, well, not last film, Centurion from 2010 is also a medieval set film. And I think if you like The Reckoning at all, I recommend checking that film out. But he didn't make a film for a decade. There were a lot of failed projects, like The Last Voyage of the Demeter. He worked in television, including a few Game of Thrones episodes. So Hellboy was kind of staged as a major comeback for him. That didn't really happen. So I was excited to see him. And also, this is the first time I've seen Ocean's 8, she had a small part in that, but really focusing on Charlotte Kirk, who of course her reputation precedes her as kind of ruining two Hollywood moguls.
Good for her.
In sex scandals.
Good for her.
I mean...
I don't know the details, so I don't know what I'm talking about.
So I'm already a little bit fascinated with her before seeing this. And I'm pleased to say that I think she's kind of captivating on screen, albeit
I agree.
A little bit too good looking to be this woman with this wavy red hair.
Okay, so I also found her captivating. I think she looks like a mature Jennifer Lawrence. Not mature in age, but because I think Jennifer Lawrence always looks like a young girl to me.
Sure.
But Charlotte's like bone structure. She looks like a woman. So I really liked her look. I thought her acting was strong. She also co-wrote this story.
And executive produced as well.
Yeah, so I was impressed with her.
There's an early, where she puts on that riding hat and rides into town. It was giving me Faye Dunaway's The Wicked Lady, the Michael Winner film.
I agree, though. I think for a woman who endured so much torture in this film, she looks pretty flawless.
Yeah.
So that was a little distracting. But I mean, you know, being too pretty is not a bad problem to have.
No,
I should know.
And Marshall's filmography is kind of filled with very strong women characters. Of course, all the women in The Descent, Rona Mitra in Doomsday, of course. Yeah. So there were things that were impressive. I thought overall it was a little dry.
A little dry. So the story is pretty basic when it comes to like how women who were accused of being witches were treated. Like we already know it's not going to end well. So I think that I needed a little bit more than what ends up happening. What I kind of wanted to happen was the visions that we see of her with the devil. I guess I was hoping that maybe she was going to accept the devil and actually become a witch and then burn all that shit down.
Oh yeah, I was waiting for her to sign on the dotted line. Here's my soul, let me take care of it.
But I'm glad she didn't sell her soul to the devil, so that's nice. And it's also nice that it doesn't have a supernatural element, because it is horrific.
Of course.
There isn't a sense of dread necessarily, but it is horrific.
Yeah, I mean, as a kid, I was fascinated by the Salem witch trials and Tituba and Rebecca Nurse and all of those figures.
You're gonna have to grab that from her. Do you want me to do it? Pause. Okay, we're back. The cat was harassing us.
That said, I think the production value is fine. I think the score from Christopher Drake, who's also the composer of the Creepshow television series, is bending over backwards to give us thrills where they aren't necessarily even needed.
Yeah, I also wrote down that the score's doing a lot more work than the movie as far as like creating this sense of dread. The score also sounded very generic to me.
Yeah, and it's not so. The Witch by Robert Eggers is a film that I quite liked, but again, that's a vibe, that's a mood, that's an ambiance, a building to a crescendo, which we never really get that here.
No.
With The Reckoning, which also shares the name with a 2002 Willem Dafoe film I've never seen.
Another note I have is like we keep getting imagery of her husband, like she has visions of him, and I thought it got a little tired because we see him like
because it doesn't really go
numerous
anywhere.
times after we know that he's dead and buried, and it doesn't go anywhere. So I felt a little let down by that.
Sure. And especially the practical effects of the devil, which was crossed between Hellboy maybe and Tim Curry in Legend.
I thought they were good.
Yeah, they look good, but I mean, again, I think I was waiting for that to go somewhere else. But
when Grace is like put in the jail and she's being tended to by the teenage boy, at one point he tells her like, "Don't give up," and I just want to be like, someone slap him.
Well, because there's one scene where they insert this large object, violently into her vagina, which she survives without confessing. So the witchfinder, who's played by Sean Pertwee, by the way, is like, only a witch could survive this pain, so we gotta burn her.
Who played the squire?
That's Steve Waddington.
So adjacent to that scene, after the witchfinder declares that she's not going to confess, so we just need to try her for witchery, the squire gets very upset. Like, you can't do that. Like,
you need a confession.
You need a confession, which I thought was so weird because he deliberately like put her in this position. His intentions of which just seem like he's an angry man whose advances were rebuffed. But now he seems to like care that...
Well, he also tries to hit on Leonora. Well, I think that there aren't that many characters, and they needed to get that viewpoint across of the hypocrisy of that, so that they needed somebody to say that maybe.
Sure.
But Steve Waddington, I for some reason...
He has nice hair.
For some reason when I see him, I always think of him burning to death in Last of the Mohicans when Daniel Day-Lewis has to shoot him in the head.
Oh.
That's a really good movie.
There is a lot of violence. Some of it is, so the main scene I'm thinking about is Grace has a friend, a lady who's married. the husband of whom is the one who captured Grace as she was trying to escape her burning house. But the woman is very upset with how Grace has been treated, and she knows her husband's a part of it. So she kind of like yells at him, and then he assaults her, and he's about to like shoot her or stab her when the wife gets the horse and carriage to like run over his head, so we see his head pop. I thought the effect of that was a little...
It's not quite in keeping with the rest of the tone of the film.
Yeah, but there is a lot of violence.
But yeah, there's flagellation, there's burning at the stake.
A lot of, I mean, women getting hit, which is hard to watch.
A lot of that, yeah.
Yeah, but it's not, I wouldn't call it like torture porn. It's just... So I've only ever seen 3 episodes of Game of Thrones, but before you told me that this person had directed some episodes, I do think this movie has like a Game of Thrones vibe.
Yeah, I think Marshall is very attuned to medieval times per se. I also thought of Verhoeven's English language debut, Flesh Plus Blood, which attempted to give an actual portrayal of kind of the very nasty human element of having to live in that time. And there's a very memorable sequence where the main characters, including Jennifer Jason Leigh, get the plague from drinking out of a contaminated well that has dead body parts in it.
Oh.
It also reminded me a lot of course, and I'm assuming this film was in Marshall and Kirk's mind when crafting this. It's a 1968 film with Vincent Price called Witchfinder General. It's also known as the title The Conqueror Worm, and that's kind of a cult classic of Vincent Price playing this vile Witchfinder General, which is a film that I kind of find hard to get through.
Oh.
But that was the last film of director Michael Reeves, who died at the age of 25 from an accidental overdose of alcohol and barbiturates. But this is if those are any kind of film that you think that you are familiar with and like, I'd say, you know, definitely The Reckoning is something you'd want to check out.
What would you give this film?
Again, a little dry, but a lot of elements I did like about it enough to say I think it deserves 3 out of 5.
I would give it 3 out of 5 as well. Thank you.
Bye.